Hello there, Atheist Junior here, your friend and humble narrator, and I'm back, guys. I'm back. Took a little hiatus from YouTube, a mental health break, for various reasons that I listed on my my community post. But I'm doing good now, and I'm ready to sort of go over the debate I had. I know it was a kind of a divisive and controversial debate for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to be joined by my friend, Mark Reid. So, Mark, if you want to just sort of introduce yourself a little bit to people who might not know who you are.
Hello, I'm Mark Reid. I'm a atheist from Australia, Western Australia more specifically. So on the other side of the world from AJ, who is amazing and does some amazing stuff. I'm really pleased to be invited to comment on this one. We were just decided to review it and just have a talk about it. How we feel about it. Basically, I wanted to come on and pick on Hovind because he kind of deserves it. So nothing too nasty. No, I just want to really roast the guy. So, I know Australia is fake. Yes. We've all got it before. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I get paid a bundle just to fake a bad accent and pretend I'm from Australia. But basically, my background is I worked in IT telecommunications for a long time. I'm currently at university studying for a sort of network engineering degree. And I do debate in my spare time, which I really enjoy. And I'm really pleased to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me on, AJ. It's wonderful to be here. And hopefully we can have some fun and have a laugh at Kent and his ridiculous stuff.
Yes. Well, thank you. That was. I appreciate the compliment. But this is going to be a light toasting and roasting of Kent because I held my tongue a lot during this debate because I thought that a debate format should have at least some sort of level of baseline respect between the two participants and also the moderator towards the participants, which I did not receive from either. But I'm just the type of person that I'm not going to sort of be firing back and forth with somebody. That's just not my personality. And I know that some of my viewers were a little disappointed with that. And I understand, I get it. I know that you guys are sort of on my side. And when you see Kent insult me like that, it's frustrating. And you're going to take it a little bit personally. And you want to see me sort of claw back at him. Well, that's what this video is for, And like Mark said, I don't plan to just, pointlessly insult Kent, but there's going to be a lot of things that I have thoughts on and that I didn't get to say during. So we're going to get into that now. And the way that we're going to do this is I'll show my opening. I'm going to show the very beginning of Kent's opening statement, and then we're going to skip the rest of it because I don't want to put you guys through any more of listening to Kent than is necessary. I think that's fair enough. So the title of this debate is Evolution on Trial. Is there reasonable evidence for evolution? Of course, it's not on trial in the scientific community where there is no debate. Sorry, real quick. We have a super chat for $5 from Vondalia in 1998. Thank you. The reason it was a dumpster fire, well, you'll see. But basically, Kent opened with ad hominem insults, bringing up pointless personal information about me that he considers an insult. I don't consider it an insult. I just consider it to be a factual statement. But some of it was not factual. And he was angry, shouting in my ear during the entire debate, interrupting me, cutting me off, and just generally being a huge dick. So at some point during this debate, you're going to hear Kent say that
I just want to mention that usually debates, there's a certain level of it's a dumpster fire. It's kind of hard to define, right? But usually there's a level of decorum, and that's the word I would use, or respectability for the other side that you would have in a normal debate. A sort of wait for them to finish, or sort of, and there is a certain level of people, interrupting to clarify, or people, sort of saying, hey, but you're misrepresenting me, and things like that. But there comes a time where it is, if one person is just interrupting all the time, shouting, a complete lack of decorum during a debate to let the other person make their point, and sort of present your points in a way that's not offensive, or not, making. And Kent does this a lot in previous debates. He's, banged a SpongeBob, and, really tried to get under the skin of the other person. That's what we'd kind of classify as a dumpster fire. Just because you're not there to, in good faith, to argue your points, and most importantly, let the other side make their points in a good faith manner. You're there to bring it down to a sort of schoolyard level, insults and, ad hominems and stuff like that. And ad homs occasionally doesn't make it a dumpster fire, but when it's on this level, I think it does. And I just want to give a big shout out to everybody out there. I'm sorry, Andrew Cumming and Sunflower and Ian. I think Bree's out there as well. Mark Stoney, hello.
Hi, Mark.
And hello to everybody. I'm sorry if I missed anybody. It's a very, very long line of chat, but it's really good to see you.
The purpose of this debate is for AJ to provide evidence for evolution. I'd like to see it. There's a lot to unpack in that statement, and there are some problems with it. Kent has already said that he will say until the day he dies, there is no evidence for evolution. So Kent's already made up his mind. He's decided, and Kent thinks that he's an authority on what is or is not scientific evidence. I'd like Kent to explain what gives him that authority.
Why are they teaching this? I think when you teach the kids evolution, that is child abuse. You are lying to them to get them to believe a theory. There is no evidence for evolution. If you disagree with...
But there's also another problem. Me and Kent are talking about different things when we use the word evolution. When I say it, I'm referring to the scientifically accurate definition. Okay, right here, I do think it was a mistake to use a definition that has the word kinds in it. I didn't get called on that, but that was something I noticed afterwards where I was like, that was not a good idea.
With a good faith interlocutor, you kind of say, well, because when you're saying kinds, you're not referring to the kinds he is, like the biblical definition of kinds. And this is the problem with definitions. They have multiple meanings, and words have multiple meanings, and unfortunately Kent is bad faith, and he will take that kind to mean his definition and only his definition, whereas you're referring to it different kinds is sort of different varieties is what you're saying. In this, that's the sort of definition you're using. But yes, he could potentially jump on it and go, oh, well, you see, you use biblical kind. Not very honest of him, because obviously you're not referring to a biblical kind here. But yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
Well, see, I agree, and that's the thing with Kent is that he would it's a good thing here that he obviously wasn't listening to my opening, because this is exactly the type of thing that Kent would pounce on. And the way I see it, you can't give him an inch. You can't. You have to avoid using certain phrases, like you don't want to say phrases that he says that evolutionists say, saying, well, given enough time, blah, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to play into that, because then he's, that just makes it easier for him to do his nonsense. It's good to be unpredictable with Ken.
That's true. Yeah.
Which is the process by which different kinds of living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms during the history of the Earth. This is the definition you'll find from Google. And evolution by natural selection is about biodiversity, and it encompasses microevolution, which is variation within a species, and macroevolution, which is variation between species. Now, Kent already says that he accepts microevolution, so that's half the battle right there. although saying that you accept microevolution is still saying that you accept evolution. But my question is, how can we debate on evolution if we can't even agree on a definition?
Well, I don't think Kent
Hope
wants to agree on a definition.
No,
he doesn't. He wants to strawman the the evolution definition.
He has
He
to.
knows, like, he's done almost 300 debates
In the early 2000s.
Evolution, we're referring to biological evolution. He knows exactly what we're referring to. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care that he's strawmanning somebody's argument, and that's sort of really indicative of somebody that is incredibly dishonest.
Kent posted an offer on his website claiming to offer $250,000 to anybody who could provide evidence for evolution. Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis commented, AIG would prefer that creationists refrained from gimmicks like this. But if you read the fine print, when you actually went to go and claim that offer, you had to prove the following. You had to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the process of evolution is the only possible way the following observed phenomena could come into existence: time, space, and matter, planets and stars, matter, which created life by itself, early life forms learned to reproduce themselves, and that major changes occurred between these diverse life forms, i.e. fish changed to amphibians, amphibians changed to reptiles, and reptiles changed to birds or mammals. So you have to assume that a God already exists, in which case he's omnipotent and could do anything he wants. So there's nothing, and you have to prove that God didn't do it this way. Another quote is, "It is your job to prove what is being taught to our kids as fact. All 6 meanings of the word evolution above is indeed a fact." So is this the only thing that would qualify as evidence to Kent?
On paper. Let's observe it. That's what science is. Get in the laboratory, make your chimpanzee, produce longer arms, and turn to a human. That doesn't happen.
No shit.
Straw man. Chimpanzees don't. Humans and chimpanzees branch from a common ancestor. That doesn't mean a chimpanzee will give birth to a human. As I sort of said in my debate against Kent, that things don't go sideways on the phylogenetic tree. They just don't. They branch out, but they can't jump from one branch to another. So if you've got a modern bacteria, it is not going to give, sort of evolve into a mouse because they are already split. Once they've split, you can't jump sideways. It might evolve later on, given, sort of a billion years, into something that resembles a mouse. But the way we classify things, it won't be a mouse because that has already diverged on the tree of life. And this is something that he does over ad nauseum, in my opinion.
Yes, he says the only way for you to prove or evolution to me or to show any evidence of it is for you to give evidence of something that either is not evolution or would actively disprove evolution.
Right.
It's quite a good strategy, I have to say. If you're going to, be dishonest, fraudulent, unscientific hack and try to dispute evolution, it's a good way to go about it.
Yeah.
So Kent wasn't looking for evidence back then, and he's not really looking for it in his debates either. That's why he defines evolution as starting with the creation of the entire universe instead of Earth having already been formed with life already on it. His definition is a straw man. He's conflating things that are not the same. He claims that evolution says that one animal gives birth to a different kind of animal. So he wants to make it seem like there's a legitimate debate in science between young Earth creationism and biological evolution by natural selection. That's why he reframes the definition of evolution to start with the creation of the universe.
Do you mind pausing on a sec? Just, all the creationists out there, there's no debate in science. Like, there is no debate going on outside of very narrow creationist circles. I'm really sorry, there just isn't. It would be like saying there's a debate going on between medicine and alchemy. It just, the sort of blindsidedness of creationists, because in a lot of respects, and I've said this to Kent, you're like flat earthers. You're sort of saying, oh, there's a lot of debate going on about the shape of the earth. Not really, no. Not outside of your very, very narrow circle that are basically science deniers. So you to us saying there's a lot of debate going on, you sound exactly the same as flat earthers do. Because, yeah, there's debate going on about the shape of the earth, but in a very, very narrow, very loud segment of the population. In mainstream, there's no mainstream science, there's no debate. There just isn't. I'm sorry.
So my first question to Kent in this debate would be, what would you actually accept as evidence of evolution? This will never get answered.
Yeah.
It's not even addressed at all. Which
I don't think
I forgot about, honestly. I should have.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right.
He won't accept anything as evidence. I sort of liken it to the famous Ken Ham and Bill Nye debate, where they were both asked at the end, like, what would you accept? I think that one was about.
Well, I think the question was more like could you be wrong? I don't know, something like that, right?
Or what would convince you that you're wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah, so, which is a great question.
Yeah, which Bill Nye said, anything that we can demonstrate scientifically would convince me that I'm wrong. Anything you can present that would, falsify this. And Ken Ham basically said nothing, because the Bible is inerrant. There is nothing you can prevent to change his mind. And
right.
Kent's.
And I know that Hitchens Razor says that extraordinary claims like young earth creationism require extraordinary evidence, but I would rather say, how about just literally any piece of evidence of any size?
Well, the problem with that is you don't sort of what constitutes extraordinary evidence. I think that any claim requires significant or appropriate evidence for the significance of the claim. So, yeah, a claim that huge, you would at least need some really solid, reliable, robust evidence that can be replicated and shown to be, we can have some really good confidence in. Yeah.
Because
never is done.
He's been presented a lot of the similar lines of evidence many times. He's done almost 300 debates, and he always hand waves away huge categories or huge scientific fields outright, like paleontology. Just no fossil could possibly count as evidence. No fossil you could ever present counts as evidence. No DNA counts as evidence. So my question is, what would count as evidence? And that's where I'll end my statement.
Okay, AJ, thank you so much. That was perfect timing, actually, between 4 and 5 minutes. And I do appreciate the visuals there. Let me get rid of the
thank you.
Full screen. Also to the audience, I am all caught up on questions. And of course, we've already got a big audience. So if you do have questions, just please make sure you're tagging me. Okay, that being said, we're going to now hand it to Kent. Kent, you have equal time, 5 minutes for your intro. Then we'll get into the discussion. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. It's good to get to know a little bit about AJ. I looked at his channel.
My fucking ears. Jesus. Nice audio, Kent.
For the first time today. Says he's 5'1", and April 21, he came out online as bisexual. He's a makeup artist. So it's good to know. And he'd sure like to make fun of me on his channel. Most of his videos are about me. I'm living rent-free in his head. That's okay. So not a problem.
All of that has got nothing to do with the debate, and really underhanded and, a really horrible thing for Kent to do. So basically it's like poisoning the well. He's trying to ahead of the time say, hey, you can't trust anything he's got to say because he has these attributes, kind of thing.
Right.
It's really, really nasty thing to do. It would be like you starting saying, well, Kent's a convicted tax cheat. He's been convicted of structuring, which is a tax fraud. He's been convicted of battery of his wife or assault on his wife, and was sentenced to 30 days for it. What did he appeal? Did he get out?
He's currently so you're taking the words right out of my mouth, Mark. But
sorry.
He it's okay. He got charged, and he got charged with it, and he's currently in the process of trying to appeal that guilty verdict. So he did get a guilty verdict of abuse in that case.
Wasn't that the same as convicted?
I guess you're right. But since we don't know if what's going to happen with the appeal, as of now, it's still sort of up in the air. But yeah, he did. I just say that he got a guilty verdict. You know what I mean?
Right. It would be the
sure
same
as
thing. Starting the debate with that. And so here I want to bring up the role of the moderator to sort of stop these real personal stuff that you would bring up.
Well, I want to say something real quick.
Yeah,
sure. This really made a lot of people angry. I know it pissed you off, and my audience was not happy with this. And Kent resorted to ad hominem insults within the first 10 seconds of his opening statement. I don't think that you could give a more perfect example of an ad hominem attack. For some reason, he thinks it's relevant for him to give a biography about me for some reason, even though we already did openings where we introduce ourselves. Now, I chose not to acknowledge what he said at all during the debate. But like you said, there are so many things that I could have brought up to fire back at Kent. Like, say, Kent Hovind is a radical Republican preacher. He's a convicted felon who spent a decade in jail for structuring his withdrawals and failing to withhold Social Security taxes from his employees. He's a tax protester and sovereign citizen. He's been accused of domestic abuse against his ex-wife, and then they had a guilty verdict. And his best friend is a registered Class 3 sex offender with 6 charges of lewd and lascivious conduct with children under the age of 11 years old. I could have said all those things, Mark. See, I didn't say those things. All those things about Kent that are all true, but I could have.
There's so much more. I mean, you could have brought up kids dying at his theme, the very loosely theme park. His family some of his family's estranged from him. He's been divorced X amount. Like there is so much. It seems to me, and this is just from my perspective, so I could be wrong, but it seems to me like Hovind will tell people not to do things, like don't make it personal, and don't bring up multiple subjects, and don't do this and don't do that. And then he will go out and do them himself, right? Because if you did bring up that stuff, me personally, I think he would say, hey, you're just being personal, got nothing to do with the debate. But the thing that I find astounding is the complete hypocrisy that he will do it himself while demanding you don't do it. And to me, that just shows the class of this man's character. Who does that? Who says, hey, don't be personal. That's got nothing to do with the debate. And he does it later on. Sorry, spoilers, but he does something where he's like, Donnie, stop him. He's talking about something that's got nothing.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with the debate. So the question is, should the moderator have stepped in? I think so. I think that I don't think Donnie's a bad guy. I think he's a good guy. He does not clamp down on Kent as much as I would like. I think that Kent brings in a lot of traffic for him, a lot of stuff for him. And I think that he is, let's just say, wary of unnecessarily calling Kent to task, because he is worried that Kent will probably go and he will stop having all of this traffic and all of this stuff coming in, which I kind of understand.
It's a conflict of interest, clearly, but I think it is. But I'm going to read the super chat real quick.
So
Stacy C for $20. Thank you, Stacy. It says, AJ, no need to read, just support of an honest man against a disgusting liar. Well, I read it anyway. Thank you, Stacy. That's extremely generous. Thank you.
There is a need for Reid. There is a need for me. I feel the need for Reid, and I'll just leave it with that. But thank you, Stacy. Absolutely. So when you call Kent a liar, like, because I've said this before, I've like, he lies so much, and then like in the back of the head it occurs to you, does he lie or does he delude himself? There's a question to mull over at 3 a.m. in the morning when the world is against you. Does he actually lie or does he actually believe his crap? Like, it's so hard. I guess, yeah, he probably does lie. You're probably right, Stacey.
Well, he lies, but I've been asked this question many times, and it's more complicated than you might think. So there's sort of two categories of the things that Kent says. When you hear Kent talk about his biblical beliefs, like when he's saying, I think there was a flood. I think, Jesus existed and Jesus was I think the Trinity is true. Those things he believes those things are true. He does believe that. When he says things like atheists, evolutionists think they came from a rock, I think that he knows that's not true. He's just making fun of people. Because when he says things like, let me give you a better example. When he says things like, you think that all of the oceans on Earth were compressed into a little dot of nothing at the Big Bang, Kent himself has to know that that's not true, because Kent knows that Big Bang cosmologists say that the Big Bang happened, and then it was many billions of years later that the Earth formed. So Kent himself, which he says, he shows slides that say that. So he's lying when he says that we think the Earth and its oceans were part of the singularity of the Big Bang. So when he says things like that, he's just doing it to mock people. And I think he knows in those situations that he's lying. There are other things that I think maybe he has deluded himself, because when you surround yourself with yes men and you kick out anybody who is going to contradict you, like Mark Stoney, it's very easy, and you're already a narcissist, it's very easy to believe your own BS. So it's complicated,
But again, the hypocrisy, because he sort of says all the time, thou shalt not bear false witness, AJ and Mark and all these people, he always says that. They're bearing false witness. You're bearing false witness, Ken. It's hypocrisy.
All right, so we are just going to skip forward a little bit.
Just a free-flowing discussion now, focusing on one question and one topic at a time. I'm looking forward to this. This should be fun. Okay, AJ, we're going to hand it to you since Kent just ended with his 5 minutes, and we'll let you choose the direction that we should take for the discussion. Go ahead.
Okay, could you show my screen share again? So Kent said that he's not trying to get his theory of young Earth creationism taught in public schools, but I would like to play these video clips to refute that.
Buy a stack of these from our ministry and pass them out to every kid and say, kid, I'll give you $10 if you'll watch this. This one right here has helped hundreds of thousands of public school kids. It's also part of our seminar series if you want to get the whole thing for $50. Bert can help you get creation materials into your public school libraries.
What'd you say?
Tens of that, hundreds of thousands,
yes.
Millions, billions of people. Yeah, good one, Ken.
So he's just wrong when he says that he's not. Just stop the whole debate right there. He's just wrong. Just to end it right there. Don't need to say anything more. Trying to get young Earth creationism into the public school. That's not true. But it was an impressive gish gallop that Kent went on for the past 5 minutes. Kent complains in every single debate. He accuses the other person of bringing up multiple topics. And yet his definition of evolution, like you just saw, is 6 topics at once. We went to star formation, abiogenesis, macroevolution, microevolution, chemical formation, element formation, and planet formation. That's more than one topic. So I'm not sure how Kent can justify constantly saying one topic at a time when he says, let's debate evolution, and he's brings up 6 different scientific fields.
Yeah, and this was a good point, AJ, and you know, I brought it up in my debate as well. In fact, Kent and I agreed with Donnie saying, like, because he said, oh, we only want one topic kind of thing, and I said, well, I've got 3 topics all under the same subject. You know, is that okay? He said, fine. Donnie said, and I said, well, I will stick to those only on one and one condition only, that the other side is exactly the same. And Donnie's like, yes, we accept that. That is accepted. And then he goes on to go through 20 different topics. Hypocrisy again with Ken. He will say, don't talk about multiple topics, and then he will do exactly that without even blushing. You know, it doesn't, he's absolutely shameless when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the first time that I basically get interrupted by Kent, but it won't be the last. And he basically proves me right of what I just said, because he immediately does what I just said he will. Kent did this huge gish gallop during his opening, and then I reference one thing that he said during his opening, and then another thing, and then he's upset that I am bringing up different topics. Well, notice that my opening statement was extremely simple. It was very simple. It had one question at the end. One question.
Yeah.
I mean, there was maybe a second topic with the the $250,000 offer, but it was all under the umbrella of the question, what's the best evidence for evolution? My opening addressed each part of that sentence, like each word. And there was one question at the end, which is completely ignored, which it was a mistake for me not to sort of, I think the first thing I should have done was to say, Kent didn't answer my question. But honestly, after listening to his fucking gish gallop, I completely forgot.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what it's designed to do. You know, a gish gallop is exactly designed to make you forget about the points you are making before the gish gallop and the early ones that he tosses out. So you can't address anything that's said. So Kent will go through, you know, all of these different dogs and cats, and we've never seen it, and they put it in the education system, and, you know, all like 5 different topics all at once. And then you can't remember the dogs and cats thing up front, right? Because he's already moved on, and you're talking about the education system, and you can't remember the original dogs coming from cat, and it's designed to do that. That's why it's such a well-known thing in debate. But also, whatever you were discussing before then is completely out of the window, because you have come so far since then, and it's really difficult to deal with. It is incredibly difficult, especially the rapid pace that Kent does it with, and it's really dishonest. It's a dishonest way to debate. But you know, Hovind is not interested in any kind of honesty in debate or good faith arguments. He uses these tactics because they work.
Yes.
And they work well.
Okay, Donnie, do I get a chance to respond? He's already got 2 things.
Yeah, that was a minute and 20 seconds. So go ahead,
Well,
Kent.
it's free-flowing discussion. Forget the time. He's already got two topics going that I don't want. I do want creation taught in public schools, and now about the definition of the meaning of the word evolution. AJ?
That's not what I said. The definition of evolution?
Well, that was your question.
Yeah, but not during the opening. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Your religion of evolution is the only thing taught in public schools. It is a religion. None of these 5 have ever been observed.
He's right. He is right.
It is a religion, but it is taught. So I want all the public school kids to be able to see both sides. I think all the teachers should see both sides. I think they should simply avoid the topic of origins altogether.
Kids should be taught both sides. We should teach that. We should teach astronomy and astrology.
Yeah, and we should teach, globe Earth and flat Earth.
Yeah.
In schools.
It's not fair to just teach one.
Look,
Stop being mean.
There's a place for creationism in the classroom. It's just its place is the theology classroom and not the science classroom. And in my debate, I said to Kent, name one experiment that you could give to children or young adults in a science classroom that demonstrate that they could do to demonstrate intelligent design, and we just have nothing we can put in the classroom. What are they going to do? Just go outside and look at the trees? What possible experiment could you implement? And I haven't got an answer for that from anybody, but I'd love to hear it and to see whether it's actually scientific.
Yeah, this comment is a great point that I did not even realize. But here, I know that James W. is in the chat, so shout out to James and Amy Newman. James, here's a freebie for you. Here's a question you can ask Kent during your next debate tomorrow, I think. Ask him, since Kent always says that evolution is a religion, it's not science. Well, younger creationism is also a religion. So if you say that a religion isn't science, why are you trying to get it taught in public school science classes? If it's not science, it shouldn't be taught. So you can use that one if you want.
Yeah, I
evolution
think
has nothing.
the thing is, it's not fair for the poor creationists who have to have their kids sit through evolution, but not creationism. So they either want both or neither. The problem is that evolution is recognized as a science throughout the scientific community, throughout the National Academy of Sciences, throughout all these fields. And creationism is inextricably tied to its religion. There is no getting around that. And evolution isn't a religion. It's falsifiable. It's
no, it's a religion. It's a religion.
It's really not. There is no call to worship in evolution. There's no deity or overarching sort of being that administers the evolution. There is no definition of religion that you can get it under, except for metaphorical, like, someone sails on the weekend religiously kind of thing. You can make the argument that, hey, some people follow evolution religiously or believe in it religiously, but it is a metaphor. Nobody's saying in that they actually worship evolution. It's such a bad faith. It's a terrible argument, but it's the best one that Kent thinks he has, so he will bang on and on and on about it.
You do worship evolution. You worship at the altar of Darwin. Hovind.
Nothing to do with biology. You can teach the kids all the bones and the tendons and the muscles and the ligaments and the organs and the functions without mentioning evolution at all. But you guys who believe you came from a rock will not leave that out. You want to sneak that into biology class. Evolution has nothing to do with biology. So since you've got it in there, I think all the schools either teach both sides or teach neither. But right now, it's not that way. All the schools teach only one religion, and that's the religion of evolution. Yes, I think that's wrong. I think that's evil. I think you guys who believe you came from a rock should go start your own private school and teach it to those who wish to pay and come learn it. But I resent paying, and everybody else that I know of resents paying for property taxes, which go toward the public schools, when they teach a religion of evolution. It does not belong in schools. So as far as creationism in schools, if you're going to teach evolution, then yes, we should better get both in there. Otherwise, take evolution out. I'll be happy.
So you do want younger creationism taught in public schools?
No.
What?
He does.
How can he say no after what he just said? This is the cognitive dissonance in Kent Hovind's mind. This is the mind of a madman. Okay, this is like the Riddler from Batman, except less cool and with a shitty haircut.
And a Hawaiian shirt. Hey, when did the Hawaiian shirts thing start? Like, seriously, where does he get that from? Like, what is that?
it started when he got out of jail and got his stupid property. He wasn't wearing these clothes until he got his property. And in America, there's a stereotype of when a man retires, he goes and plays golf and he wants to wear comfortable clothing like a Hawaiian shirt because he's had to wear business suits his whole life and now he's retired.
Well,
that's
what I've seen.
That's why. That's literally
when he was younger, he was always wearing a horrible brown suit or something.
Yes. Awful. He said his wife dressed him, so maybe it's her fault.
Really? Can't dress himself?
Yeah, that's what he said. I guess not.
I don't think there should even be public schools, but if there are, they shouldn't teach evolution. Yeah, listen to me. If they're going to teach evolution,
which they do,
then yes, they should show all sides.
Well, they are
you
teaching
want
evolution.
Exclusive rights to the kids' brains to make them believe like you believe that there's no God and we came here from a dot of nothing exploding. That's not science.
Evolution and God are not mutually exclusive. There's plenty of Christians that believe in God and in evolution. I disagree with them on their religious beliefs, but it doesn't like if you prove evolution, it doesn't necessarily make a God not exist. It just means that the origin of life isn't literally what you see in the Bible, because it can't be. That as long as you're not a biblical literalist, you still believe in a God. It doesn't disprove a God. It just means that the Bible isn't accurate about the origin or the way life diversified, and that's yeah.
You said exactly what I was thinking, because
sorry.
If you take Genesis, specifically the first 2 chapters of Genesis, literally, then you see, because creationists, they don't really care that much about the biodiversity thing. The sticking point, the big problem, is when it comes to humans, because if you say that humans evolved and had common ancestry with different ape species and that we are apes, that's a problem, because humans in Genesis are created, Adam and Eve are created fully formed in their adult modern human form. They walk upright. They don't have body hair and fur like an ape or a chimp would, and they look like a modern human. Obviously, they have, belly buttons. Do they? Yeah. Did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? I don't know. That'll keep you up at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
that one.
They weren't born, right? So they wouldn't have had an umbilical cord. So did they have belly buttons? Wow. All right. That's a horrifying image. All right.
Yeah.
So I have said many times, if we're going to have public schools at all, they should avoid the topic of origins. Since they don't want to do that, well, the other option is teach both. Either teach both or teach neither. What do you not understand about that?
I understand that you're saying if they are going to teach evolution, which we do, although I live in Texas and they didn't teach evolution when I was in high school because creationist activists, flooded the judges with Republican senators. I really messed up that sentence. I meant to say it doesn't matter, but
I don't understand the American system that much. But what you were trying to say came across to me. Maybe that's because I am in a different country, but I get what you're saying, that they stacked whatever legislative bodies they have, and I know that the Texas Board of Education is notorious for being backwards and anti-science.
Well, yes, especially our former director of education. Oh my goodness. And I mean, Mike Pence, the former vice president, was a creationist. So,
well, still is, I presume.
Well, yes, but he's not the vice president.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm glad that what I said, came through. I think my meaning was, clear, at least. But you're saying if they do teach evolution, then we should teach both. So you do want creationism taught in young earth in school. You just said it, and you just said it in the clips I showed.
Okay, I'll say it again. If we're going to teach origins at all, which is unnecessary for biology, then
you're conflating abiogenesis and evolution again.
Yeah.
It's not origins, dude.
Yeah, and that's something. you can sort of address and say, hey, it's not origins. Evolution only explains the diversity of life. And this is where, because notice that while he said, oh, you brought up two different subjects, you brought up this and the definitions, and then he's completely ignored the definitions, right? He hasn't addressed that at all. He hasn't said, hey, I know this is the definition because of maybe this paper or this reference to say, hey, this is the way it is defined. Because if you look up evolution in any dictionary paper, they're always talking about biological evolution. They're never talking about stellar evolution. Like, it's generally understood that when you talk about evolution, it's biological evolution. Nobody's going to go, oh, well, I study evolution and they're talking about, stellar and planetary evolution. Get out of here. It's such a bad faith stance to take. And for his argument to work, it has to be true. So he won't address it. He won't look at the definitions. He will just say, this is what the definitions are, and I'm not even going to discuss anything else.
Both are teaching neither. What is going on right now is completely one-sided. It's not fair. Would you be concerned about students learning about creation? Does that bother you?
Yes, I would.
Why?
Because I kind of play into his argument here a little bit. Although I don't know how else I could have exactly answered this, but maybe, I don't know.
Well, I've got no problem with students learning about creation. No problem at all.
Yeah, but
So
that's not what he means, though.
Not in the science classroom. Yeah. There's a place for it. It's called theology, where all religions are studied. And, it would be helpful if you had multiple religious stories. And I think you get into this in a bit, that he doesn't want all creationism taught.
Yeah.
He wants his creationism taught.
Yeah, I'm about to say that, and it's going to be ignored. But I really should have said what you said in your debate, that I don't have a problem with it being taught, but not in science class, but right. The science class, that is what is being argued. So,
don't forget, AJ, I had a chance to review your debate, because I watched it before I went in, and a lot of other debates, and so I sort of knew what was coming, because Kent doesn't vary. He varies over the long term, but from debate to debate, he's almost unchanging. Like he's actually, his debate style is an example of evolution. He only makes small changes from debate to debate, and over a long time they add up to significant changes. But from one to the next, he's almost unchanged. He's not a very creative thinker at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that was, I think, detrimental to Kent, because Snake was right, debated him the day before I did. And me and him were in communication right before the debate started. And he was the one who gave me those slides about scales turning into feathers, because Kent had asked that same question to him. And so when he asked it to me, I was ready,
Yeah.
So that was, I think, a mistake on his part that I really took advantage of. Is based on, but I want to get past the public school part. So let's get past that before we. One specific version of Christianity. And I don't think that one specific religion should be taught in a public school over all other religions. I mean, would you be comfortable if Muslim creation was taught in a public school?
AJ, that's what they're doing now. They're teaching this stupid religion right here in all the public schools. It is a religious belief. Do you believe you are related to seaweed, like this chart shows?
Well, hold on a second. One topic at a time, Kent.
Okay. Well, this is the religion that's being taught. This chart is nothing but religious. Nobody's ever seen a frog produce a non-frog or a whale produce a non-whale, but they've got lines on paper connecting them back to an amoeba. This isn't science. Nobody's ever seen an amoeba produce a non-amoeba. Never. But they got an amoeba leading to a human and a pine tree and a frog and a scorpion. Do you believe you're related to seaweed like this chart shows? Is this your religious belief right here?
Yeah. And see, I didn't catch him asking that question. Like, you told me when we watched this last time. But he slips these things in so quickly. It's impossible to, address everything that's wrong with his arguments, So you kind of have to pick your battles,
Yeah, and I think he's been explained this before. He's been explained this plenty of times before. I just want to point out how great it was when you just said, wait a second, Kent, one subject at a time, because he said that earlier, and it's like, yeah, he does this. But see, he's got no shame in doing this. Like, he's got no shame in changing the topic, bringing up 5 at once. He just doesn't like it when it happens to him. And he's got no shame whatsoever in doing that. It's incredible to my mind. But anyway, yeah, and this kind of he doesn't understand that once something is an amoeba, all of its descendants are amoebas because of monophylogeny. Like, all of them are, because so yeah, you won't see an amoeba give birth to a non-amoeba because they're all amoebas from that point onwards. Now, where does the change occur where it turns from, say, a amoeba into a different, a different species of amoeba that isn't, we don't sort of say, hey, that's an amoeba anymore. Or, a dinosaur turns into a bird. Well, what he's not understanding, it's more like a gradual change that we arbitrarily say, hey, we're going to cut it off there because it has these certain characteristics that we sort of categorize them as dinosaur and bird. But then you have stuff like Archaeopteryx, which sort of sits right in the middle. And there's arguments in biology, in evolutionary biology. There's arguments over whether we should classify this as a bird because of these type of characteristics, or whether we should class it as a dinosaur because of these type of characteristics.
Yes.
And I think Kent does know this ambiguity exists because of the nature of evolution, and he's just making a real dumb, simplistic, stupid argument to try and take advantage of that.
Yeah. So I think James should definitely feel free to throw the one topic at a time thing back at Kent. Definitely, because and I wasn't doing that just as sort of a joking way. I meant it, and Kent had to agree with what I said, especially because he would be a hypocrite if he didn't. And see, maybe another question to maybe ask him. I'm just spitballing here, so feel free to use any of this stuff, James, or anybody who watches this who might debate Kent in the future, even though, probably nobody should. I'm never going to debate him again, ever. But if you do, then you need to be prepared. I don't, so if it's going to happen, then it needs to be done right, I think. So you could ask him, or maybe have a slide about this. If I have a bucket of water that has red food coloring in it, and I add a drop of blue food coloring, I continue to add drops until the water is completely saturated as being purple. You could ask him, at what point does it become purple? When is it no longer red? And it becomes purple. And it's similar. It's an analogy. It's analogous to Archaeopteryx because, not just Archaeopteryx, because the fossil record being evidence for evolution is not contingent on one fossil, but rather a multitude of fossils that are in an order of transition where you can almost see the transition happening. So there are examples of dinosaurs or just fossils where even the paleontological experts have trouble distinguishing which one is a bird or which is a dinosaur, because they're really both, because nature does not care about humans' arbitrary classifications of what different species are. It doesn't care about us, it just has
for us.
Evolution just happens, and these categories are arbitrary, and the definitions can change. And Kent doesn't seem to appreciate that fact. And it's the same thing with the reptile-mammal transition. We have fossils where, it's like, well, this thing is a lizard dog. So, Well, I've never seen a mountain form in front of me. Does that mean that mountains don't form or aren't forming now?
So you're avoiding the question by saying, well, maybe it happens too slowly to see. Okay. Do you believe an amoeba turned into a human over billions? I'll give you quadrillions of years. Would an amoeba ever turn to a human? Do you believe?
Accuses me of avoiding the question and then immediately avoids my question.
You made a direct analogy about observation in science. So when we say we have observed, he's saying that you don't see evolution. No, but we can observe it through the testing, the DNA sampling that we do. A lot of the stuff in science you do through your observations are not directly of the subject. I think somebody brought up in chat, Mark Godwin said that I think Professor Davis used particle physics. Yeah, there we go. True. Yeah, and you're just using another analogy. Particle physics, mountains. We don't see them form. We don't see them rise up. They're so gradual we can't observe it. But they still do form, and we know that they're forming now. It's a good analogy. You're not changing the subject. You're directly addressing something that he said with an analogy.
Right. And his question, the question that's sort of being argued here is about, does something have to be observed to be considered science? Because according to Kent, evolution, can't be seen over a human lifetime. So, or even the lifetimes of, modern science. We can't see, animal species like dogs. Maybe wolves changing into dogs could happen over like 300 years, but not in a way where Kent can see it, in his lifetime, basically. So the question was not, you're changing the subject to say that you can't see it happening. No, that's what you're saying. I'm arguing, well, if we can't see a mountain form, which is sort of a nebulous concept anyway, because when is a mountain formed?
Right.
It's a gradual process, but we can observe the effects of something happening. Because if you can't observe something, or if you can't measure something, what you can do is measure the effect it has on the world around it.
Right.
And we can see the small scale changes that occur of when mountains form, which Kent sort of admits, which he doesn't seem to realize destroys his whole argument about evolution. But because like I don't know if Kent accepts that tectonic plate theory is true, but
I think he does. I think he accepts tectonics. I'm just going from memory, and I'm sorry if I'm misremembering, but I thought he did accept tectonics.
Well, then he should understand my argument then.
Well, it came up in my ARC debate against him, I believe, where he said, yeah, he accepts tectonic plate theory. Like, I think he understands your argument, but he just see, this is the thing. He'll accept science even when we can't directly observe it, except for evolution. He wants direct evidence that is ridiculous for that, or else he won't accept it. It is kind of I don't know. It's very, very strange. Because I've never seen electricity either.
No, I don't believe that.
Well, then why do you like charts like this in our school system? This is not science.
Ugh.
This is pure propaganda. Yes,
you didn't
this
answer
is
my
a religion.
question.
What now?
You didn't answer my question. If I can't see a mountain form in my lifetime, does that mean that mountains don't form or aren't forming?
Well, that's a straw man. You're drawing attention away from the obvious here. That's a non-living material. Rock formation. We know how rocks and continents are moving and uplift and subduction, plate subduction. Yes, I understand that thoroughly. I taught earth science 15 years.
Okay. No, you didn't. I mean, it's so. I know that I know that we talked about this, and we talked about the tu quoque fallacy, but there was a lot of people that were frustrated in my comment section, understandably so, that Kent said this when I don't know how many freaking times he's compared evolution to cars,
Yeah.
which, you know, it's, you know, cars aren't living organisms either, but, you know, he has to say something. And if it's a straw man, what argument am I straw manning?
Right, right. And it's not a straw man. Like, the only thing he could claim is that it's a false analogy, because you are directly addressing the same comparison he made. His argument was, I've never seen a X turn into an X. And your analogy is, well, I've never seen a shallow plain or a mesa turn into a mountain. But we do know that happens. It's a direct analogy. I mean, he could claim that it's a false analogy. I don't know how he would demonstrate that. The problem is the tu quoque, for those who don't know it, it's and you also. It's kind of whataboutism. So if he says, hey, your analogy is really bad, and you say, well, you use the car analogies, you're basically not only committing a fallacy by saying, well, you do it as well. You're also sort of tacitly agreeing that your analogy is false. Sorry. And I don't think that's the case. I think your analogy is fine. I just think that, you know, at the time when he's, you know, sort of really yelling at you, basically, it's really hard to explain, hey, here's the analogy that I want. I'm explaining it. This is my analogy. This is what you said. They are analogous. But, you know, straw man? Really?
Yeah. If I can pat myself, toot my own horn, I think it's a great analogy, because
Yeah, it's good.
we can't see, like I said, a mountain form, but
Right.
we can see that small changes can add up to huge changes, like, you know, a snowball effect, or can lead to an avalanche. You know, small erosion, small changes, small pieces of the Grand Canyon being carried off can eventually carve out a massive canyon. It's a great analogy to the small scale changes of each animal that's born.
Use the Grand Canyon because Kent think that formed in like 2 weeks. So
yeah, that's why I avoided that.
Just a big shout out to I think who was it? Citizen Gold. Yeah, you're right. I've seen lightning, so I have seen electricity. Point to chat. All right. Chat 1 Mark 0. Fantastic. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but let's just
but this we don't see. We can see examples of mountains forming. We can see some happening rapidly.
Where do we see mountains form rapidly?
I don't know. Maybe
you're making a mountain out of a molehill, Kent.
Rapidly.
Yes.
Rapidly making a mountain out of a molehill. What the hell? When do mountains just shoot up in his world? Like they just, you know, you go out your backyard and suddenly there's a mountain there. Oh God, I've got to walk around this mountain. What is happening in Kent's world? Like, I don't understand.
Well, he has to disagree. He has to disagree with me.
Well, that's true. Maybe he's talking about like his flood thing where he thinks that, you know.
Yeah. In his world, you did see them form rapidly, because I mean, if you think about it, for the Earth to have formed in 6,000 years or 4,000 years or whatever, I guess the Earth was formed right at the beginning of the universe being formed in creationist clownland. You would have to say mountains form very quickly, because, you know, they would have had to form in thousands of years instead of millions or billions, you know? So I guess, you know, that sort of makes sense in his twisted, maniacal worldview. They do form rapidly, but still not on a human lifetime timescale. So
right. Yeah.
If you've seen the debate with Aaron Ra that Kent has, a video exchange debate, some of my favorite YouTube videos of all time. When Kent is watching Aaron's videos, he pauses them constantly, and he just disagrees with whatever Aaron just said. And I think he disagrees without even thinking about what he's about to say. He just knows that he has to, he's a contrarian. He has to disagree with whatever was said. And then afterwards, he'll think of what way to actually justify the fact that he disagrees. So he gets caught in things like this, where he just says things that are, even he doesn't think are true, but he just has to say I'm wrong, you know, because he can't answer my question. I'm glad I asked it more than once. And a good debate moderator would step in and say, Kent, you need to answer this fucking question, dude.
Well, like I said, Donnie's not going to jump in on your side, probably unless you sort of go, Donnie, do something.
Well, and then he's a spineless coward. He's a coward.
I wouldn't go that far. I just think that
I would.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I probably wouldn't go as that far, but I think that a truly neutral moderator probably would have, especially when he was sort of, you know, making it personal at the start, when he's yelling and sort of interrupting so egregiously through this debate. I think that a truly neutral moderator probably would have stepped in. I think that whether that's through maybe he was having a bad day, or maybe he is biased towards Kent because he does bring in a lot of traffic, which I can kind of understand. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to be neutral, which I don't feel that he was from my perspective anyway.
Whether it be the various different mountain building processes with igneous rock or metamorphic rock, I understand. But this chart shows an amoeba turning to a human, and nobody's ever seen that, but you're trying to avoid answering the simple question by saying, what about mountains forming? You're diverting attention. Do you believe the amoeba turned to a human and you are related to seaweed like this picture shows? Do you believe that? Just a yes or no?
No.
You don't believe you're related to seaweed? Good. Well, then would you?
Notice how he asked two questions at once.
He actually said, do you think that you, what did he say? Whales are related to amoeba or came from an amoeba?
Do you think that humans can, an amoeba turned into a human and that you're related to seaweed?
So first off, nothing turns into anything else.
Yes.
They evolve over time. Secondly, an amoeba is a modern organism. It has branched out on that tree of life. So when you're looking at an amoeba, like a modern amoeba, it's actually quite complex. It's a complex life form. The prokaryotes that were originally in the past that he's trying to conflate with modern amoebas, and there's a reason for that as well. It's because amoebas actually have tons of chromosomes. So he's trying to conflate a modern amoeba with a simple single-celled organism like a prokaryote that was very primitive. And he's trying desperately to conflate these two. But no, an amoeba is an amoeba will give birth to other amoebas and evolve into something else. Again, you can't jump sideways on the tree of life to humans.
And I think the fact that modern amoeba are so much more complex than the earliest prokaryotic single-celled organisms shows that fact, because they wouldn't still be around as a single-celled amoeba, would they? You know, because they would be they'd be us. You know, it's like the misinterpretation of evolution that says, well, if we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? It's like, well, if I have bread and I make toast, why do I still have bread?
Yeah.
Help me get this kind of stuff out of the textbooks, because this isn't science. What now?
That wasn't the question, Kent. Are you saying that that chart says that the earliest single-celled organisms were modern amoeba?
Well, they're showing a single-celled creature. Let's see. I got all kinds of charts here. The
conflation. All single-celled creatures are obviously the same. All of them. It's just such a...
I'm the one who's dodging questions, though.
Yeah, apparently so.
Family tree. Oh, no, geologic column. I got 20 million slides here. But
Oh,
the
and
textbooks are
my
full
slides
of this kind of stuff. There you go. These family trees, 85, shows humans and Australopithecines and Homo
Bullshit.
erectus all connected by lines to a common ancestor. Do you believe you're related to a lemur? Would that be a simpler question? Maybe you can answer.
Yes, but I want to stay on the question previously because
Okay.
the
This
earliest
is a religious
single
belief. You
Look at
want
that.
you want your religion.
See that interruption? You said, I want to stay on the previous question because, and you're about to outline, your position on the question. And he just jumps in over the top of you. It's shameless the way that he does it. Is just, no, I can't let you make your point. So I'm going to jump in and try to bring it back to this thing. Let's see if it's actually on the question that you're actually discussing, which is that modern amoebas are not the same as primitive prokaryotes. Let's see.
So I was asked a question, I answered it, and then I said, I want to stay on the previous topic because I wasn't done saying what I had to say. And then Kent steamrolls me, and you can see that this is where I start to get really discouraged.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing Donnie fail to do anything, and this is a big reason why this debate, I think, was so hard for me. Was shit like this.
And look, for those people in the audience, you can kind of look at Kent, and maybe the reason why he wears Hawaiian shirts and looks like a bit of a goofball is so people underestimate him. He is very difficult to debate. I've debated him twice. It's very hard. He's like trying to pin jelly to a wall. He really is slippery and will duck away from your questions, refuse to sort of not answer them, carry on to something else. He's good at the rhetoric of debate. His arguments are terrible, but he's good at the actual rhetoric of debate. And he wears you down. I remember both debates, I was kind of exhausted afterwards. He really does wear you down with these bad faith arguments and things like that. I can totally understand where you're coming from. Absolutely, AJ. He is exhausting to debate.
Taught in the schools. I resent that. Go start a private school. It's easy in Texas. Start a private school and teach the kid, hey, you're related to a monkey. Teach them that. But that's not science. They show this kind of stuff, and it's pure propaganda. This is a religious belief. Here we go. Single cell.
Nothing to do with the question that was asked. Why do you think a modern amoeba is the same as a primitive unicellular organism? It's got nothing to do with it.
Creatures turning into humans. It happens. It's in all the books. I think there's nothing scientific about these charts. Nothing. This one shows the birds, the reptiles, and the mammals have a common ancestor. Wow. You believe you're related to a snake? Chart says you are.
One topic at a time, Kent. So the earliest single-celled organisms were not amoebas, not in the slightest. Amoebas are super. Okay, I'm glad. I'm like proud of myself here because I didn't give up on my question.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see me get interrupted again and again because he's trying. He doesn't want to talk about that subject.
No, he doesn't want you to make this point, which is really important for evolution, that even things that we see as simple nowadays are not the same as more primitive life forms ages ago. So, but he'll say, okay, and then interrupt you again.
Yeah, and one of the sort of critical comments that I got from my own viewers, and there was a lot of constructive criticism, but that was part of why I was discouraged after the debate, was because there was a lot of criticisms that I felt like people were making good points, but there was some comments that said that I let Kent interrupt and steamroll me too much. But the thing is that I think those people might be missing the context of these interruptions, which I also did. And if you'll notice, every time that Kent really blatantly interrupts me is right after I've made a good point or asked him a question that he's dodged, and then he does that.
Or when he gets onto a subject where he knows you can make a good point, he'll interrupt as soon as he hears the subject. He'll be like, wait. And he won't let you talk to make any points at all. So yeah, you had a lot of good points, and I'm glad you dragged it back because he was going down the education route. It's almost like a distraction kind of thing. And in this case, you didn't play into his hand. You went straight back to the original topic, which is fantastic, AJ. It's really good. I don't think this debate is as bad as you thought it could be. I think Kent's behavior is disgusting, but I don't think your performance was bad at all. I think you did it well. I really do.
Yeah, I think, I had a high standard for myself. But, it was, I was a learning experience. And I think I was so sort of emotionally drained by just Kent's general behavior that I was mistaking those emotions for thinking that I had done something wrong. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I've come out of debates and gone, I did absolutely terrible, and then we sort of see, hey, there was stuff in there that I got right and did do well. And this is one of the things you did really well. Don't let him get away from, because as I said before, he's like nailing jelly to a wall. He's so hard to pull back to the points that you want to make. He just will duck, dip, dive, dodge, and dodge. Like he is terrible. It's hard. And I just want to say to the audience, like, it is really hard to debate Kent. It's very, very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do.
For specialized creatures, amoebas are highly derived eukaryotes. The first single-celled organisms were anaerobic prokaryotes. So,
And how do you know that?
Because of the taxonomy.
Well, you're using a big word there. So because we can put this thing into a chart and call it
ladies and gentlemen, he taught biology for 15 years and he doesn't know what taxonomy is. So yeah.
You're a doctor, Kent. I mean, shouldn't you be comfortable with big words?
Yep. It's only 4 syllables, Kent. It's not like... what are you doing debating evolution if you don't understand the word taxonomy?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it was a good answer because the reason that I know that, for one thing, it's because I have a rudimentary understanding of science and biology that I've studied, not academically, but just learning from watching YouTube videos like R and Raw and reading scientific papers and articles and having just a general interest in science and human evolution. I personally think that I don't know much when it comes to cells and cell biology because that's very complicated. I don't know shit about ERVs. That's why I didn't bring it up. Because I wanted to keep my argument simple because I think a lot of people, go in debating Kent and they come in with a lot of very, highly scientific arguments. People like Snake was right or Dr. Dan that understand these things a lot better than I do. But the thing is that Kent's always going to drag it back down to the simple version of that argument anyway. Sure. So I think it's better to engage him on the level that he's at, because Kent says that he's at a 4th grade level, even though he says he has 4 doctor's degrees. I had a simple opening statement, but it was just ignored anyway. But my questions have been, I don't think there's anything wrong with approaching a debate with Kent with good science, but that's just not. I'm a layman, you know what I mean?
Same.
So
I am.
Anything I learn is just going to be from what I've researched on the internet,
Same. But the thing is that the people who actually understand, like, ERVs, virologists and epidemiologists, they're not going to be going on the internet to debate. They've got better things to do with their time than participate in a debate that in the scientific community isn't even a debate. Like, it's not, it would be like a astrophysicists participating in a flat Earth debate. It just isn't something that they've got better things to do. So it's kind of left to the rest of us. I mean, the closest I've really done, I did a unit for science communication. It was a obligatory unit in university. Everybody has to do science communication if you're in a field related to science. So you have to do that. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, I took a risk by taking in sort of technical stuff against Kent. But the thing is, I don't understand it to the degree that would be required for somebody even doing an undergraduate course. Certainly not. I wouldn't claim to. All I can do is relay the findings of scientists, people much smarter than me and more knowledgeable than me in genetics and things over. And I think I can sort of more or less accurately relay the science, at least, for layman's accuracy. But Ken doesn't understand it at all. So it's not like he's going to ask you a million questions on it. He doesn't understand it.
Well, I think I want to move on, but I will say that
Sure,
I think that the scientific evidence is good, but the more important thing is that can you communicate why this thing is good evidence for evolution? That's the important part, I think.
Right.
And that's what I think is difficult with ERVs. Personally, I don't feel like I would be able to do that and really explain as a layman and to a layman audience why this is good evidence for it, even if it is. So, and by coming in with a simple set of arguments and a simple opening, I know that there's not as much risk of me stumbling over my words as if I was reading something very, analytical and scientific.
And everybody's got a different debate style as well. Some people do like to get into the nuts and bolts of sort of, I mean, Erica, for instance, is amazing because of her technical knowledge. I love watching debates with Erica, and that's gutsick given for everybody out there. She's really good. She's got she studies early hominids, ape biology, and she is amazing. But of course, she has the background for it, but incredibly effective. I think that it depends on your style, though.
See, that's just knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are and playing off of those. That's good strategy, I think. But yeah, I've met Erica in person and got to talk to her about some of those subjects and interview her. And she is awesome and one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. But I've rewatched her debate with Kent recently. I think she had a similar problem to me, is that Kent really did everything he could to dominate the talk time, which is unfortunate.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he was not, he had no shame in what he was doing. I think it was a strategy going into just not let you talk. Which is, okay, it's an effective debate strategy. I've seen plenty of flat earthers use that strategy. It's not an honest way to approach a debate. But he has no shame when it becomes like he is so dishonest. He demands that you only talk about a few topics. He'll throw tons of them out there. He accuses you of straw manning. The amount of straw manning Kent does, you could start a scarecrow factory. It is crazy how much he straw mans evolution.
Yeah, it's a fire hazard. But let's move on.
It happened. Claim it came from that. Therefore, it's science. It's not. We don't see this happen. No single-celled creature has ever been observed, whether it be amoeba or eukaryote of any kind. No single-celled creature has ever been observed turning into anything else.
Bullshit.
It's not observed. E. coli has a generation time that's really short. I think you get 5 or 6 generations per day. We've watched it for years and years. It never produces anything but E. coli. Do you believe a single-celled creature turned into all the creatures that we see today?
You can't have a single-celled creature, because a creature is like the word animal, right? Or am I nitpicking?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a bad word to use that somebody in a scientific field wouldn't use. They'd probably use organism, but I kind of get what he's saying. I think he's using it for organism, but whether that's dishonest or not, because he's trying to say creature, like you say, an analogy for animal. I don't know, but yeah, he's trying to say organism. If you knew what,
all right, fair enough. Fair
organism.
enough. Yeah.
You believe these kind of charts is this science or is this a religion?
No, I don't think that a single.
Well, this is so. When they say hobbit here, are they talking about that human ancestor that's really short?
Yes, I believe so.
So
Like
this isn't a J.R.R. Tolkien thing, right? This isn't like Lord of the
No,
Rings
no, no.
lore.
No,
Okay,
no.
because that would have been funny.
I think it's Java Man was the Hobbit. I would have to check that. Maybe it's not. I don't remember. One of the skeletons.
I'll look.
Was,
Yeah, you or me can look it up, but I'm just gonna.
Still a creature turned into multiple different animals. Because you're talking about one single-celled organism that turning into a bunch of other animals. That's not what evolution describes.
It is exactly what they say, that single-celled creatures slowly turned into humans and bears and starfish. This is what they teach, and this is my point. And you're trying to very skillfully avoid answering the simple question. Do you believe these charts are religious? Is this science? Science is what we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Nobody's ever seen a monkey produce a non-monkey, or a chimpanzee produce a non-chimpanzee, or a baboon produce a non-baboon. Nobody's ever seen a human produce a non-human. Nobody's ever seen a single-celled creature produce anything other than same kind. The Bible says they're going to bring forth after their kind, but you wish to believe, capital B, believe, that all the life forms came from a common ancestor. And I'm just saying, most people with a brain resent that and think it's a religious belief, and you want your religion taught at taxpayer expense and nobody else's religion taught. So if you're going to teach yours, then I'm going to try to get mine into the schools any way I can. I'm going to pass out DVDs. I want every kid, every teacher to know the truth. So when the textbook says, well, you're related to an amoeba, they'll all laugh at it. That's the best we can do right now.
Well, thank you
and
for
before
admitting.
you respond, AJ, I want to give you plenty of time. I've just now got about 20.
God forbid I get to fucking say something.
Yeah, no, that was just filibustering. That was just him gish galloping along, filling time. And then Donnie came in just as he tried to address that.
Yeah, if Kent doesn't interrupt me, then he does. You'll see there are 2 points in the debate when Donnie steps in to sort of call that we're moving on to the next section of the debate, and both times he cuts me off.
Yeah, I think that I would like to generously believe that Donnie isn't trying to cut you off, but
well, he does let me say something afterwards, so let's see how long I get to talk when I do get to say something.
At least 20 people in the chat saying that we should keep it on topic as much as possible. Not saying that this isn't a fantastic discussion so far, but again, what is the best evidence for evolution, or is there reasonable evidence for evolution? So maybe let's try and shift our focus even slightly if we can. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I have some slides of evidence, but real quick, I would just like to ask Kent, what do you mean when you say we've never seen a dog produce a non-dog? What do you mean by produce?
Okay, when Kent answers, he's going to do so in a very condescending way, the subtext being that I'm stupid. But it's a fair question.
Yeah.
That means have babies, have sex, produce a baby. Only happens with male, female, by the way. But go ahead.
No.
Kent, go fuck yourself.
Well, aside from that, he's wrong. Like, there is single cell division, mitosis. Yeah. There's no, like, you're demonstrably wrong, Kent. There is all kinds of replication occurring in vastly different ways.
Is budding?
Right. You are an idiot. He's an idiot. Like, he's just thinking one way and not, What an idiot.
Yeah, I like the stupidity mixed with bigotry. That's always a nice combination. It's like peanut butter and shit.
So,
well, they actually go together. You
Yes.
find them in the same place a lot. So I'm not entirely surprised.
Well, bigotry is a direct result of being ignorant about things. So
Right.
Does that mean that you think evolution teaches that a dog could give birth to something like a cat?
Evolution, the charts show very clearly that dogs came from something that was non-dog. That's what they show.
Not giving birth, though. Wolves
Not
didn't
giving
give birth. A wolf didn't give birth to a 100% dog. You can crossbreed. You can have a dog who's part wolf, but ancient wolves in China didn't give birth to modern dogs. It happened over a process of hundreds of years of being domesticated and all that.
So the question I would like to ask is kind of why, if dogs and wolves are the same time, if you breed them, they produce sterile offspring. So why is it that genetic diversity, and he often bring up ligers and cross and donkeys and bring up mules.
Yes.
The thing is, mules are sterile because their genetic diversity from horses has branched far enough they can still breed, but they will always produce sterile offspring. Why is that? The question is why.
That's a good question.
I don't think that's science. I think that's pure religion. This one shows mammals like humans and birds coming from a common ancestor, and crocodiles. That's not science.
But you know that those charts aren't talking about an animal giving birth to another animal.
Do you think the ancestral
Just another question that's ignored.
amphibian at the bottom of this chart slowly over millions of generations gradually gave birth to humans?
No, and that's not possible to gradually give birth to something over millions of generations.
Oh, brother, you can't be this dumb, AJ. You know full well what I'm talking about.
No,
Yes,
I don't.
The moderator should have stepped in here and said, "Hey, can we not have insults be thrown?"
I don't know what Kant is meant, and I didn't know what he meant then because I repeated the same exact phrase that he used.
Yes.
Because his argument is conflation, and
Yes.
it's illogical, and that's why it doesn't make any sense to say giving birth over many generations, because that's a good description of his way of describing evolution, his way of conflating one. And I know this is a big sticking point in the debate, but it's important because this is the sort of foundation of Kant's argument against evolution, and he has to strawman and conflate these two things, and it's quite clever. I feel like people don't, and that's why I asked him, what do you mean by produce? Because it's important if we're talking about one animal giving birth to another animal, because no animal's offspring is going to be an exact genetic clone of its parents. It's going to have slight differences in its DNA, in its nucleotide sequence, because of mutations that are random. That's the mechanism that causes evolution, or one of the mechanisms. But that process is different. That's, I think you could call microevolution, but that's different than the long-term process of those steps adding up, each of those generations, those ancestors, adding up the change that adds up. That's what macroevolution is. So it's important, this distinction. So first of all, it's just rude for him to call me dumb because I'm not stupid.
I would use a lot of words to describe you, AJ. Dumb would not be among it in a million years.
Hey, I don't claim to be a fucking doctor. So
yeah.
I may not be a genius, but I'm smart enough to know how to make a good argument. And the fact that all of my questions and arguments gets ignored, I think says a lot more about Kant's intelligence than it does mine.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. I think that, and it says a lot more about your honesty than Kant's does, that you do get attacked like this, and you are humble enough to sort of just ignore it and get on with the debate. I think that says a lot about you and a lot about Kant, that he's got to attack like this. He doesn't have a decent argument, so he's got to call people dumb, attack people personally, make these straw man arguments, these fallacious, false analogies, these horrible, horrible arguments. Not to detract, like I said, his arguments are terrible. He's actually, his rhetoric and how he speaks is very hard to deal with. But, I think, AJ, one of the things that I love about you is that you are humble and you're not aggressive at all. You are really understanding. That's why I loved that interview with Cindy Lincoln, because you were so understanding and so supportive. I love that about you. You are such a genuine guy, and just because you're not coming back and calling Kent stupid and stuff, I think that's a credit to you, not a detriment. I think that's
Yeah, well, thank you. And I mean, I haven't even done that here, because I don't really see the point in that, because I don't think that Kent is necessarily stupid. I think that I think you have to have a level of intelligence to be as successful of a public speaker as Kent has, and to have the successful career that he has had.
right.
Kent's not. I don't think that Kent lacks skills or is just, completely brain dead. I think his issue is more of a willful ignorance or a willful, resistance to debate in good faith. That's more of his problem, is that he's not willing to give that leniency to his debate opponent. It's a lack of respect more than a lack of intelligence. I would say that Kent, his bigotry is a cause of him being stupid, because he doesn't understand that, saying, people who are gay can't reproduce is a very dumb statement, because first of all, no shit, but also, I don't even want to get into this, but he's too stupid to understand the distinction between being gay and being bi. He doesn't understand that straight couples can also be infertile. That doesn't invalidate their relationship or them as people. And
right, but gay people can reproduce. They can get surrogates. They can use artificial insemination.
It's also invalidating people who adopt kids and saying that their parenting is not as valid as people who reproduce sexually. So
and super chats come in.
So we have a super chat from a New Zealand Citizen Gold. Says, Kent, I don't think that's science. Everyone, that doesn't matter. You are demonstrating that you don't understand science. It needs to be said again and again and again. Yes, it's very true. Kent doesn't understand science, but he's not willing to try and understand, because there is some science he accepts, but he is a la carte. He picks and chooses the things that he wants to take the time to learn about and understand, and he, that's what Christians do with their religion. But he also is very picky about, if something supports his position, like a Scientific American article, then he'll show it as a reference. But then later on, he'll trash that same publication when they say that evolution is true. I have a community post about that.
100% right. You're a million times more intellectually honest than Kent will ever be. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Andrew.
Your textbooks teach that all the animals slowly change to other things. Slowly, bit by bit, this early reptile turned to a bird. This is what the charts show, whether it took 1 generation or 10,000 generations. Nobody's ever seen a reptile produce a non-reptile at all. This one shows birds coming from reptiles. That's not science, not even common sense.
You're conflating two different things, because on one hand, you're talking about an animal giving birth to its offspring, and then you're comparing that to charts that talk about changes over millions of years with populations of animals over many generations. Okay. So you're conflating these two different things.
So you believe the birds reptiles gradually turn to birds over millions of generations. Where is the scientific evidence for this?
Yes, you're getting
Nobody's ever seen any of it. It's imagination. That's all you have is SpongeBob imagination. Give me your address. I'll send you one. You need one. Keep on your dresser.
I'm
Just
not going to
imagine.
I'm not going to give you my address, Kent, because you'll give it out like you gave my last name. So
Give me a post.
Did he give out your last name?
Yeah, in a video that went up the day that the debate was originally supposed to happen. When Donnie called me and said Kent Hovind says he hasn't eaten any food in 3 days and he's very sick and he wants to either do a short debate or have Matt Powell step in to finish the debate or just reschedule. And I said, let's reschedule, which I think was me doing a courtesy to Kent because I did that same day. Kent does a live stream on his channel. I guess he felt well enough to do that, where he talks about the fact that the debate was rescheduled, and for some reason shows a slide that had my last name on it, which
that's doxing.
It's
whether intentional or not, it's still doxing you.
It was very intentional.
It's completely inappropriate during a debate to ask for somebody's home address. That's so inappropriate because there's no way the other side's going to agree to giving their home address out on the internet.
Yeah, it's like, there was like 300 plus people watching this, right? Am I supposed to give it to you now? Because Kent signed off the second the debate ended, he went offline.
And let's face it, this isn't part of this is Kent just distracting again, because you are making a really good point. And this is what AJ pointed out earlier when we were discussing it, that every time he had a really good point and he's trying to say, hey, we're talking about there was no sort of early reptile that gave birth to a bird. It's gradual changes until humans arbitrarily go, okay, we're going to cut it off here between this and this sort of, theropods and birds kind of thing. We're going to cut it off. He just brings out this SpongeBob and goes, oh, give me your address, because he knows it's just distraction. It's just noise to divert you away from what he doesn't want you to talk about. It's quite awful. And with insults like this and calling you stupid, I sort of was thinking about this last night, and I thought, so he's supposedly a Christian, and they're supposed to sort of turn the other cheek, and his obligation under 1 Peter 3:15 to treat others with gently and humility kind of thing. Like, is he really following the Bible while doing this? Might be interesting to ask him. James, if you're still there and he calls you a name, maybe do bring up 1 Peter 3:15 and why he thinks it doesn't apply to him.
Post office box, and I don't care. Believe me, I'm not stalking anybody. I want to get you converted. You believe one of the dumbest religions in the history of the world. Nobody's ever seen any animal or plant produce offspring that would be considered a different kind by anybody with one functioning brain cell. It just doesn't happen. Only in your imagination. Happens so slowly we don't see it happening. Well, science is what we can observe, study, test, demonstrate. Do it in the laboratory. Get a bunch of reptiles and slowly turn them into birds again. Turn a reptile scale into a feather. Just start with that.
You just fucked up.
Yeah, because we can demonstrate.
I'm sorry, I just think that's funny. It's like, when Kent said this, I was like, oh, Kent, you just activated my trap card.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Scales don't turn into feathers, really?
Yes.
Parts are different, the lungs are different, the reproductive system different, the DNA different. Just the scales turning to feather. It's not science. It's all you believe in it, and I admire your faith, but your faith is misplaced. These charts are not science. They're propaganda. That's all I'm saying. They got them all lined up here going back to a common ancestor. Do you believe kids should be taught stuff like this? Should this chart be included in a public school textbook?
Sure, but it's a good thing that you mentioned that. Donnie, can you show my screen share again?
Yes.
Really quickly, Kent said that reptiles and birds' sexual reproduction is different. They both have cloacas and reproduce in the same way. It's just that a reptile has an internal sex organ, or two of them, called a hemipenis.
And they both lay eggs. They're not entirely dissimilar, but yeah. And can I just point out that he's sort of saying take a modern reptile and a modern bird and turn it back into a reptile. Things don't, like, there's no de-evolution, there's no going backwards for evolution. It will turn into something, but you can't just turn it back. Like the straw man here is that once they have diverged, you can't just change things back. It doesn't. Nothing works like this, Ken. It doesn't work like this.
Well, it's a safety blanket, a safety net. Which I think Kent is really just proving the point of my opening statement, that he's intentionally saying the only way to prove this is to me is to provide something that I know you can't do.
Right.
And it's kind of cowardly, you know?
That was his evolutionary challenge. It was sort of explain or demonstrate everything, like, so I can see it, including stellar formation, right? How are you going to show somebody a sun forming? It's the most disingenuous request to ever come out of the creationist side. Or it may not be. I just haven't seen a more disingenuous request, because how am I going to show you, like, to your eyes, a sun forming?
Yeah.
This is actually relevant to the slides I prepared. So feathered animals did evolve from animals with scales.
Let's see how long I get to go presenting about 4 slides.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I really wanted to show, was about the first 4 slides that have text on them, and then I would have been happy to open it up to Kent to respond. I have some pretty short bullet points here, but we'll see how long I get to talk.
Vast majority of the time talking too. Like, let's face it,
Right.
He has been able to bang on and on and on about his creationism in schools for ages. So I think giving you time would be fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen debates where something like this happened, that Donnie would have told Kent to let me finish, but I had to do it myself, which is ridiculous.
And feathers, as well as hair and fingernails, are made of the same protein as scales.
One topic at a time. You're making a statement there. Put it back up if you can. Feathered animals evolve from animals with scales. This is propaganda. This is not.
He brought up this topic of scales don't turn into feathers. So one topic at a time, but he's bringing up multiple topics, including this.
Yeah,
he's got no shame.
And he's literally interrupting to say what he's been repeating for this whole debate. He doesn't even have anything to add.
Science. Nobody's ever seen any animal with scales produce anything other than babies with scales. So where's the science? You're claiming this is evidence by making a statement. That's not evidence. I'd like to see this happen. Where is the scientific example of any animal with a scale having a scale slowly change into what looks like was going to be a feather? Where's the science for this? You making the statement isn't science. This is propaganda.
Well, if you would let me finish, then I would get to my evidence.
Go ahead.
So
where's the evidence?
On the left, we have a picture of the common roach, which is a fish that has scales. And on the right, we have a snake that also has scales. So this is a fish and a reptile. And here we have a close-up of a pangolin, which is actually a mammal. So if you look at the structure of the feather, you can see that it's actually got a lot of similarities with pangolin scales. So feathers are a specialized type of scale. Human hairs are also, in effect, modified from scales. So are fingernails. So scientists actually did a experiment where they were able to turn scales into feathers by turning on and off key molecular circuits at critical stages of scale growth and development. So they were able to take the embryo of an alligator and add a chemical to it and start growing feathers. So this has actually been done in the lab.
It's
Scientists
in the
have
lab.
converted
Does that
scales.
therefore mean it did happen in nature? That's your evidence?
Yeah,
You said
this
that
is-
it's only science if we observe it. So this is science according to you because it's been observed.
Well, it's been observed that people can put nuts and bolts and parts together and make a car. But the question is, can the car make itself? You're claiming, and I'd like to see the evidence. I'd like to read up carefully on what they actually did in the laboratory. You're claiming that they turned scales into feathers. I don't believe you for 1 second. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I couldn't think off the top of my head what the name of the chemical was that they added. I think it was retinoic acid.
Okay.
And so Kent spent a lot of time in this debate saying, where's your evidence? And then I said, here's my evidence. And Kent says, well, I don't believe you.
Well, he basically, the fallacy is shifting the goalposts. So Kent started out with saying, we have never seen a scale, feather turn into a scale or vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. Show me where we've seen this because it has never been seen, right? And you've said, well, we have seen it in a lab. We've done this and we can see it. And then he goes, well, that's not in nature. It's in the lab. Shifting the goalposts is what you're after here.
Yeah.
So he said, we've never seen it. You demonstrate very well. And this was my favorite part of the debate because, you know, he was constantly trying to interrupt you, constantly trying to shut you down because this is damning for his thing of, well, we've never seen it. Yeah, we have. But he just goes, but you've got to show it in nature. Well, wait a second. In nature, it happens over millions of years.
Right.
So like you said before, and I totally agree with you, he is shifting the goalpost to try and demand evidence from you that you cannot possibly provide.
Yeah. He and asked me, you know, where have we seen scales turning into feathers in the lab? And then when I start to give my presentation that you can see has multiple slides, I don't even get to the second bullet point because all I said was that feathered animals evolved from animals with scales. And then Kent accuses me of saying my evidence is that sentence, that my declarative statement is evidence that it happened, as if he never does that. You know? How many times has he said that DNA similarities are evidence of a common designer? Well, him saying that doesn't make it true.
Right. And the thing is,
he's saying, he's saying, give me evidence, and then he interrupts me before I can finish giving my evidence.
He's not.
Go ahead.
He's not acting in good faith at all.
Yeah.
Okay. But if they could do such a thing, again, that wouldn't prove it happened by itself in nature.
Not necessarily, but I think it does prove that it could have happened.
Right.
And maybe we should do some more science and see if we can find more evidence that this could have happened.
Well,
but
I think
that wasn't the question he asked. If it did happen in nature, it did happen in the lab. I've shown that. Although he says I'm lying, he accuses me of lying, basically.
His demand was to demonstrate that it can happen, not can happen in nature. His demand was that it can happen. So it can happen because we have demonstrated it can happen.
Well, show me something happening over millions of years in front of me.
Yeah.
Well, you can't. Oh, well, then I guess
And
it's
that
not science.
and that is beautiful because it sort of draws back to your analogy that will show me a mountain sprouting
Yeah.
up in front of me right now.
Yeah. Which I probably could have brought that up again, that question. I think it would have been interesting to see what other excuses he would have made, but I'm not going to second guess the things that I said, but
No, you don't have to.
Pictures here someplace of the scales and feathers. You can put your picture back up of the feather. Feathers are incredibly complicated. They have little barbules that hook together so that it locks together and makes one coherent unit like a parachute so the bird can fly. And if you think scales, you compared pangolin scales and some other scales. Sure, a lot of animals have scales. Some have different types of scales. They're designed.
A lot of animals who aren't reptiles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To have scales that work for what they need to work with. But nobody's ever seen a scale turn to a feather. Nobody's ever seen this happen. You believe it, which is fine. I admire your religion, but you don't have science to back that up.
Well, my religion has more evidence than yours does if it's a religion that scales turn to feathers.
Well, there is some evidence there, yeah, and we've got pretty good evidence. See, you could bring up Archaeopteryx and sort of the transitional fossils that we found. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think Archaeopteryx's feathers were the same as modern feathers. They were more primitive kind of thing. And yeah, Citizen Gold, you're absolutely right. Nobody's seen a goat created from nothing. No one's seen a human created from nothing. So it sort of shows you have a double standard. You have
right.
The standard.
I was just thinking that. Well, no, I was thinking that this might be fallacy, like we talked about earlier, though, the tu quo qui thing, because it might be, not really admitting, but like you said, tacitly admitting that it's true that nobody's observed. If you say no, well, nobody's observed your creator either. That's sort of admitting that nobody has observed, scales turning to feathers or whatever. Even if that's not true, I don't know if that's the same thing.
You could point out the double standard that Kent has, the intellectual dishonesty of sort of saying your standard for evolution is so high that you want to see it in front of you in real time, even though it takes millions of years. And your intellectual standard for God is, well, a book told me, so that's enough.
That's a great point.
That your standard is not as high as evolution, or else you would have to, if your standard was consistent, you would have to be able to see, wombats and birds and humans all pop into existence right in front of you. That's the only way you'd believe it. But your standard for creationism is so low that you don't even need any evidence. Just you proclaiming it is enough, or your Bible proclaiming it is enough.
Yeah, or even if you want to avoid his obvious comeback would be the, I'm not trying to get creationism in public schools bullshit. You could frame it differently as saying his evidence, his standard for evidence of evolution is much higher than his standard for other fields of science that he does believe.
Right, absolutely. And your mountain example is a perfect example of that.
And because I sort of change it to just geology later, which, you, according to your definitions, which I think is a great tactic against Kent, is to take his definitions and his standards and say, okay, well, are you consistent? If I apply this to something else, do you agree with that? And, I think that's why I love, you mentioned double standards. I love pointing out double standards that Kent has in debating him. I think that's one of the best things that you can do, because he hates that. And one of the ones that I had that people really liked in my first debate with Kent, I got a lot of comments that were sort of complimenting me on this one, was that I asked Kent, do you think that, because Kent brought up that I think donkeys and horses, I think, have difference of chromosomes of 2 chromosomes. And so I asked Kent, I said, you think that donkeys and horses have a difference of 2 chromosomes, and do you think they're the same kind? And he said yes.
Mhm.
And then I told him, well, humans and chimpanzees have a difference of 2 chromosomes, but you think they're not related. And he said, oh yeah, not at all. Same God designed them though. And I said, that's a double standard. And he just says, okay.
Right.
There's no reply to that, you know?
Yeah, he's got no shame when it comes to anything. But yeah, that's a perfect example, and I love it because it sort of goes, well, your kinds thing has there's no set rule for classification that they have. There's no objective standard. It's just whatever they feel is a kind, is a kind, and whatever they feel isn't a kind just isn't. And it's useless. It's useless for science because you can't classify anything with that. You know, you're just going to have a whole bunch of people arguing over what kind means.
Yeah. So we're at the 2-hour mark. So what I think I'm going to do is fast forward a little bit to my second sort of slide show, and
Sure.
we can comment on that, and then we'll wrap it up after that. How about
Yeah, yeah, sure. You're driving. I'm along for the ride.
Okay. Just don't want to have to hear Donnie talking because I don't like him. Okay.
He doesn't.
Wouldn't that mean that there have been
See.
10,000 single?
Well,
Am I
Right.
debating Kent or the people in his audience?
Right. Why does his peanut gallery get to chime in with stuff that he can say? He's debating you. There's a one-on-one debate. This is so egregious. Does Donnie say something here?
Yeah, this is the thing that finally gets him to say
Yeah.
something to Kent.
But this isn't the first time I've heard Kent's supporters in the background
Yeah.
shout things into him, and he seems to be listening more to them than to the person opposite. And it's
Yeah.
just it's just really dishonest in a debate to have people feeding you information. Like, it should be coming from you.
Yeah. You know, it's like I'm debating like 5 people at once here.
Right.
Actually, I'm going to jump in, Kent. Let's just make sure it's between the debaters. AJ, I
Sure.
noticed you wanted to share your screen. Was there another line of evidence you now wanted to? We went back and forth on that one for about 12 minutes. Maybe we should jump into another. I can
That was back and forth to you? Okay.
share your screen if that's what you wanted, AJ, or however you want to proceed. Go ahead, guys. Great discussion so far.
Force them
Yeah,
back.
if that's okay, I'd like to talk about kinds for just a second. So what is a kind? Let's find out. So Kent says that the definition of a kind is 2 animals that can interbreed. Bible says this 10 times in the first chapter, and a dog cannot produce a non-dog because they would be a different kind, like we just went over. But what about squirrels? So the kaibab squirrel is separated by the Grand Canyon from the Abert squirrel. And these 2 squirrel populations, because evolution is about population genetics, have been separated long enough to where they cannot interbreed and produce fertile offspring anymore. It's not.
And Mark, why don't we sort of hold our comments till just till I
Yeah,
sort of finish? Okay.
Yep.
Not because of any physical limitations. Their genetics will not allow them to interbreed if they tried. So I just have a few questions for Kent. Do you agree that animals can change over time?
I think the animals can change wildly within limits. I think they're both still a squirrel, and a 4-year-old will tell you that. Now, whether they're interfertile or not for genetic reasons or biological reasons or mechanical reasons, there's all kinds of reasons creatures cannot be fertile, but that doesn't, they're still the same kind. Yes, the Abert squirrel and the kaibab squirrel are still squirrels.
Okay. Well, can this be caused by natural selection, this change?
Nature can select which ones survive. That happens all the time. You turn all the dogs in the world loose in Alaska, the ones with short fur aren't going to survive. Nature is going to select the long-haired dogs to survive in Alaska. It's not going to create long hair. It's going to select that part of the population. That's all it does. Natural selection selects. You want to give it creative power. I'm sorry, it doesn't create anything. It can only select. And it works fine. Yes, I believe in natural selection.
Okay. Well, and then can this produce animals that can't interbreed anymore? This process.
I think that, Yes, I think at the extremes of the kind, there might be some that can no longer interbreed. The Great Dane and the Chihuahua would have a difficult time, but they're still dog. To a 4-year-old will tell you that. And that is not evidence that the dogs, the Great Dane and the Chihuahua, both came from a rock. Not evidence at all. You guys want to take the examples like this, like the squirrels, and say, see, that proves we came from a rock, which is what your religion teaches. And that's not science. I got the Abert squirrel stuff right here. I'm looking for my slides. But, so yes, I believe natural selection works just great. And it only selects, doesn't create a thing. You want to give it creative power.
Okay, so you do agree with me that one population of squirrels can, over time, because of variations, produce 2 populations of squirrels that can no longer interbreed. Would you agree that this same population, this new population, let's call this one the kaibab squirrel on the left, do you think that this population can also produce 2 populations of squirrels that can no longer interbreed with each other?
Possibly over generations that could happen. Now, did they come from 2 squirrels as parents? Every one of them came from parents that were 2 squirrels, no exceptions. Now, if they eventually get to the point where they can no longer interbreed, which happens, that's still a squirrel. I think we see this happen all the time in just about every type of life form, whether it be potatoes or squirrels or pine trees. Variations certainly happen. And sometimes they get pretty bizarre. Finally, I got it. 1396. Okay, 1396. That's what's happened with horses, for example. There are some that are no longer interfertile. You got itty bitty horses and great big horses, and they're still horses. So the kaibab squirrel, the Abert squirrel, we've got 8 of them in our museum, I think, stuffed and mounted up here. Someone gave us. They're still squirrel. Now, whether they can interbreed or not, not after they're stuffed and mounted, they can't. But before that, they might have been able to. I don't know.
Well, Kent, you know what this image reminds me of? The tree of life.
So I find it very interesting that Kent started off saying, talking about 4-year-olds, because a 4-year-old would tell you, if you ask them, are the kaibab squirrel and the Abert squirrel the same kind? They would say yes, but they can't interbreed. They can't bring forth. So how are they the same kind?
Right.
And Kent says, I think, a kind, if they bring forth, they're the same kind. That's an extremely simple and extremely limiting definition. He says at the edges. He says at the edges of the kind, they might not be able to bring forth. Well, that breaks your definition.
Well, yeah, that does
because
break
of physical limits.
Yeah,
okay.
But
that's an important distinction. You're right.
Yeah, but that's but it still says that they're able to bring forth. So if they're not able to bring forth for any reason, then they're not the same kind according to the Bible. He agrees that natural selection happens. He agrees that natural selection can produce animals that cannot interbreed. That's all he's got to admit. You have him right there. You are absolutely right. Because
that's the ball game right there.
If natural selection can produce animals that cannot, and I'm using the sort of biblical terminology here, that produces animals that cannot bring forth according to their kind, then they've just jumped that kind barrier.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I
think so.
Yeah.
Because really, what you were right, because it shouldn't really matter if it's only because of physical limitations, like the Great Dane and Chihuahua, like Kent said.
Right.
Because his definition, it's so simple. You can't apply that to the whole of living organisms on Earth, because not all of them are animals. Not all of them reproduce sexually, and so just saying they can't bring forth, well, that the thing with the Chihuahua, that breaks the definition. But I was careful to choose an example where it was genetics, where these animals clearly, if you look at them, they seem like they should be able to bring forth, but they cannot because of genetic changes.
Well, he smuggled that in there. He kind of said, "Oh, animals aren't interbreed for a variety of reasons, including physical." And he smuggled genetic reasons into there and went past it really quick, so it wouldn't be noticed. Well, if they can't breed for genetic reasons, then that's speciation, or what we call speciation anyway. I don't know what Kent would call it, probably different kinds. But yeah, he kind of moves past it real quick so you don't notice.
Yeah. And I think we could sort of wrap it up, because I don't think Kent deserves to talk anymore, and I don't want to subject anybody to hearing his voice anymore.
Well, it's up to you, AJ. I'm more than happy to stay, mate, if you need me, around. And I could pick apart Kent a lot. I mean, he exhausts me, but I think that really I do like analysis of sort of Kent's dirty tactics, because there's a reason why he uses them, and has been using them for 30 something years. It's because they are incredibly effective, dishonest as hell, but incredibly effective.
Well, I'm going to be more fair to him than he was to me. Let's at least see what he has to say in response to this, I guess.
Okay, sure.
Wait. So this same process you just described is the same process that is described by evolution.
Yeah.
Back up one slide. Okay.
Right.
You have 7 different kinds of squirrels.
7 different kinds?
7 different kinds.
I thought they were the same kind, and a 4-year-old would tell you. I don't know.
Yeah, and as I've said before, like Kent, the kind, he conflates it. So he will use kind as in kinds of squirrels, and then use kind as in one group, like a genus kind of thing. So he'll use it for species, he'll use it for genus, he'll use it for almost individual squirrels. There is no objective designation for kind. It just doesn't exist. It's whatever you need to use it at the time.
Yeah, I think that people who watch these debates and who have debated Kent, it's sort of common knowledge that Kent, he gish gallops, and he does, things like making straw man arguments. But I think one of the biggest things that Kent does that does not get enough sort of airtime is conflation, because it's very sneaky. But that's why I've been in my debates trying to make more people see this, that truly, I don't think it's actually gish galloping, or maybe, it's all, combined, but I think one of the biggest foundations of his way of argumentation is conflation.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you have to unravel all of the things that he's, all these crumbs that he's picked out of the carpet and glued together.
Yeah. And he fires them out so fast. It's you spend so much time addressing his bullshit conflations that it wears you down. Like, you get exhausted because you've got to say, no, Kent, this doesn't equal this, that isn't remotely, no, Kent, and it's just, he fires them out at such a rapid pace, and with no shame, I might add. Like, that's a common theme. He has no shame in doing so. He will hear your objection and go, all right, and then make the same conflation again. It's exhausting.
Yes.
It's maddening and exhausting. It's terrible.
That's what Professor Dave pointed out, and he did that in my debate. But I can't. He combines these shitty argumentation tactics. He mixes gish galloping with things that are conflated with each other. So not only are you expected to respond to many things, but you not only have to respond to each thing, you also have to untangle all of the actual truth that he's jammed together to make his phony argument that he jams together, then twists to strawman it. It's crazy the way he misrepresents things.
Yeah.
That reminds you.
gish galloping conflation.
I don't know. It's like the Hovind hustle.
Hovind, I love it. The Hovind hustle. That is brilliant.
Now go one more, advance one more. So because you see 7 kinds of squirrels, therefore sunflowers are related to kangaroos. Do you believe sunflowers are related to kangaroos?
Sure. I said
Okay.
it reminds me of this image because of the shape.
The SFT fans got really mad at me for the way I just quickly answered things and then moved on. They really got mad about that in the comment section.
Yeah.
But
Sure. Yeah, we think they're related. But again, another conflation is he's sort of using the term relate, like you're related to your cousin or you're related to, you know, your grandson kind of thing. The relation that we're talking about is so distant. It's you know, millions of ancestors different. So he's sort of conflating by saying, you think you're related to, you know, a sunflower is related to a kangaroo. Yeah, but not in the same way that we say I'm related to my third cousin.
yeah. So we allowed Kent to respond, and his response was, so because you see 7 kinds of squirrels, which is not what I said, you think that kangaroos are related to humans or something. No, and this is something he does a lot, is that he says, you said X, therefore you believe Y. And it's like, no, I didn't claim that. I never claimed that what makes me think common ancestry is factual is anything related to the kaibab squirrel. It's the fact that all organisms on Earth share the same genetic code, and common ancestry is shown in the genetics. The same way that we can prove with a DNA test that Eric Hovind is Ken Hovind's son.
Correct.
Well, I mean, the comments, the SFT fans were saying I was saying the word extrapolate too much, but if you extrapolate that same process to every living organism, you can show that they have relation. And if you believe that those DNA tests are valid and you don't think that I'm related to a kangaroo, it's like I asked Kent later in the debate, what's the cutoff point where it's not science anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't answer that either, you know? So I'm going to declare victory over Kent, say, Kent, you're a rude douchebag for the things that you said and the way that you treated me in this debate. I'll never debate you again, not because I am afraid to, because I think I am 2-0 against Kent, but because you have shown that you don't have any intellectual honesty or integrity. In order to meet me on an equal playing field, you have to have a biased moderator. You have to try and stop me from making my points, from presenting my slides the same way you get to present your stupid slides. I should have that same right as a debater. You have to have an unfair advantage, and you still lost. And also, you have way more debate experience than I do. So
from my
all that, and he still lost. I think that's
well,
fair to say.
from my mind, I think that it depends on what you think winning a debate is. Like, if you think just shouting over the other person, like, you know, the flat earthers do or something like that, is winning a debate, well, that's not my definition of winning a debate. It's presenting the best arguments and the best points, which you clearly did, because all Kent did is repeat the same fallacies over and over and over that he has been doing for all of his life. It's like, if you think that winning is just simply shouting and being rude to somebody, well, whatever. I don't really care about your opinion at that point, because a yelling match in the street, you'd think whoever's loudest won. It doesn't make it so. And absolutely, you did win that. He didn't address any of your questions. You addressed all of his. I think that you would do a lot better with a moderator that, you know, will take initiative and not let Kent get away with his shit.
Yes, like
I,
to
I,
the people,
yeah.
to the people who actually think Kent won, or just to you, imagine how I would have done if I had that moderation. It would have been bad for Kent,
Mhm.
but he has to. It's like you said, the volume of someone's voice is not a deciding factor of who won the argument, and that's all I really have to say about this debate. I think you can end it there.
Reason to doubt does have a good point. Is it moral to share a stage with a person who has been
Oh, yes.
convicted of a crime? And that weighed very heavily on me. It wasn't something that I did lightly. I found out about it after I'd agreed to the debate. I think that if Kent does serve his time, he, anybody, I'd like to think that anybody that serves their time has fulfilled their obligation to society. I think that I probably will refrain from debating Kent until he has served his time for his crimes. And then I probably will agree to a debate after that if I'm called upon. Because I feel like someone's got to stand up to Kent. He just puts out this bullshit, and I really would like to try and reach his followers and sort of say, hey, believing in evolution doesn't disprove a God. You can believe in evolution and still believe in a God. It's just we have this scientific fact and a theory to describe how it works, and it's just science denial that you're engaged in. But yeah, that did weigh very heavily on me whether I should cancel or not. I felt like I'd already agreed to it, and sort of to be as professional as possible, I was going to follow through with what I agreed on. But it certainly would weigh on my mind if I was offered another debate tomorrow. I would feel that I would lean towards no, not until he's actually served his time. But I don't have a lot of information on. I don't look. I don't follow Kent at all. I pay no attention to Kent whatsoever. So yeah, that's my opinion.
I am familiar with the details of Kent's case, and I still debated him, and I can, I know some people had issues with that. They took issues with that. That's why I think this was sort of a controversial decision for me to debate Kent, and the debate itself was sort of divisive, and there was a lot of different opinions about it. But I think hopefully this video will sort of put more context of the way that the reason that I performed the sort of way I did. But I'm a pragmatist, and the way I see things, the reality of the situation is that people seem like they're going to debate Kent for now anyway. And I just feel, because I am a sadist and I can't seem to stop myself from watching these debates, that if they're going to do it, then I want people to fucking give it to him. Give him the business. I want people to be prepared. I want people to make Hovind look stupid. Honestly, I want them to show that, not necessarily stupid, but I want him I like seeing him get caught in a lie, get caught in those double standards, because it's irritating to me the way he just spews this stuff unchallenged on his videos. That if somebody debates him, I want to see, of course, I want to see them do a good job, So I took it upon myself to do it. I had other reasons that were, basically just the fact that the first time I debated him was before I even had a camera, before I had the experience doing YouTube and debating people that I have now, and I wanted a second chance at it because I felt like I could do better. Of course, I feel like that now, but Mark, if you want to make any closing comments and say where people can find you if they want to see anything more from you, I really appreciate you coming on to do this. Your input has been very helpful to me in sort of recontextualizing the way that I saw this debate, and it really helped me to sort of feel better about it. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always great to talk to you, AJ, and I really enjoyed going through it. And yeah, just seeing so I sort of just see somebody who is authentic and honest and humble without getting angry, without shouting, and just a really dishonest, angry, nasty old guy who's just attacking you. It just, you not only do I think presented the better arguments, you also you were a better representative for atheism than Kent ever could be for creationism. They talk about angry atheists. Well, what about Kent? It's turning red and calling you dumb and just being an ass basically. But yeah, I'll wrap up. Yeah, I love hanging out with you, AJ. It's good fun. Always enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Mark Reid. I do debates. I might be starting some gaming soon. Don't know. I've got a couple of ideas brewing around the old head. I'm kind of only begrudgingly broadcasting and doing stuff. I do plan on sort of expanding and doing, getting some input from AJ, and he's always great in giving me advice on how to grow a channel. But that's secondary. I really love debate. So I'll get AJ to post my channel if that's okay, mate. And
yeah, I will put your channel link in the description of this video, but I'll also put links to your previous debate with Kent, and maybe more than one, so people can check that out, because I think you did a great job in that debate. It was another bad performance by Kent. I think that was your best debate so far against Kent. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved that debate. I think I absolutely mauled the guy, which was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was exhausting, but I felt very good about it afterwards. And I noticed that he didn't put it up on his channel, which always gives me a good boost, because he is so selective about what he puts up and what he doesn't, kind of thing.
Well, he put mine up. I don't know what that means, but
Oh, who knows? He might just be. Yeah, I mean, I might not be big enough for him to put up. That's another possibility.
Yeah, that does make sense, because it was, it was a big debate. The debate's sitting at like 14,000 views on my channel right now, which is crazy. Okay. So thank you guys for the people who watched the debates and the comments. I got a lot of great comments of constructive criticism. But I'll put Mark's links in the description, and thank you guys for watching and Mark for joining me. So I'll just see you guys in the next video. Peace out.